What if we could see the multiverse all at once? Imagine this CR lying in Betty's half-closed seated fan worry overhead like some quiet spacecraft orbiting your ceiling. Then suddenly a thought grips you. What if everything you've done, every choice you've made, every turn you didn't take, every breath you held back, a call of it still exists in some other version of you? Not a dream, not a theory, but something real now. Picture this. What if you could see all of it at once? Every you that ever existed, every world that ever could have been, every fork in the cosmic road laid bare in front of you. This isn't just imagination, this is the multiverse, and tonight you're going to dive into it with no limits, no rules, no safe boundaries. You're going to see yourself reflected in an infinity of mirrors, each one more strange and beautiful than the last. Dent blink, the journey is already beginning. Asterisk. The moment your fingertips touch the second mirror, it doesn't shatter, it breathes like glass that was never solid to begin, with like a thought waiting to be remembered, swallows you whole but not violently. It feels like falling into a dream you once had as a child, a place you never reached, but always believed you would. Now you're standing in a field, but the sky above you isn't the one you know. It's painted with colors that don't have names and clouds that shift like thoughts in someone else's mind. The air tastes like memory, and standing a few feet ahead of you as UA, different UA's eyes shimmer like starlight swallowed by oceans. He's younger than you remember, but older than you ever were, and he's building something in the middle of the field. A tower made of letters, each block is a dream, each stone is a wish he refused to give up. And you see pages from your childhood journals floating around him. You see old sketchbooks you threw away, unfinished poems, forgotten promises. He kept them all. This version of you he never stopped dreaming, not when they laughed at him, not when the world told him to grow up, not when life became a list of things to do instead of things to feel. He looks at you and smiles. He says you came back like he always knew you would. You walk closer, and as you do, the field begins to hum with energy like the ground itself remembers the footsteps you never took. The tower rises higher and higher until it pierces the sky. The sky bleeds starlight and pours it into the tower, and then you understand he's not building for this world, he's building for all of them. Every tower is a bridgy message sent out into the multiverse that says, I didn't forget who we are, not in this life, not in any life. You look down at your own hands, and they're glowing now, lines of light tracing through your veins like circuits of belief. He tells you gave up once, you walked away, but you always had the cue, just forgot where you buried it. Beneath fear, beneath doubt, beneath responsibility, disguised as survival. But here, right now, you're allowed to remember. He touches your chest, and suddenly your ribs crack open, not with pain but with release. A single glowing thread floats out. It as a dream you forgot, the one you loved most, the one that made you feel like the universe was listening. You take it, hold it, and the thread wraps around your fingers like it belongs there, and he says you can take it back. You don't have to stay, but you don't have to forget either. Then the tower explodes, not with destruction but with light, and in every direction you see bridges forming, gateways, portals, passages into other versions of you. You're standing at the epicenter of possibility, and the dream thread in your hand starts pulling you toward another mirror. He's already walking away back into the field, still building, still dreaming. You call out to him, ask him why he stayed, why he didn't leave when it got hard. He stops, looks back, and says, because dreaming is the only thing more real than regret. Then he vanishes, and so do you, back into the mirror, the thread in your hand now pulsing with the beat of every heartbeat you've ever had. You land back in the mirror room, but you're not the same you. Remember now, you remember what it's like to believe again, even if the world calls it foolish, especially. Then you look at the next mirror, and the dream thread in your palm pulses once like it's giving you permission. The multiverse opens again. Asterisk. The version of you that chose silence this time. The mirror is darker. The surface doesn't ripple like water. It vibrates slowly like a pulse, buried in stone. You hesitate for a moment, because you're afraid, but because you can already feel it. Before you even step through, this one is quiet, too quiet. The moment your body passes through the surface, the world becomes hollow, muted. It's like stepping into a dream where sound has been outlawed. You open your mouth to speak, but nothing comes out, not even breath. You look down, you're standing on cracked white marble, a long corridor of mirrors on both sides, but these ones are all covered, veiled in cloth, tied shut with red string. The air is still thick-witting. Then you hear Ita heartbeat, but it's not yours. It's distant, muffled, like it's trapped behind walls. You can't see. You walk forward, drawn to a hand halfway down the corridor. You see him, but not quite this version of you, sits cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed, lips sealed, literally stitched shut with golden thread, not from injury, but by choice. His hands are resting on his knees, and around him are shattered pieces of sound, notes, frozen mid-air, words that never left his mouth, confessions, scream songs, questions. He never said any of them. He chose silence. You kneel in front of him, and you feel something deep stir in your stomach. You know what this version is the you that never spoke up, never said I love you, never said I'm scared, never said I'm sorry, never said asked for help, never told the truth. When it counted, he buried every word, like a seed that never grew. He opens his eyes. They don't judge you. They don't plead. They only reflect, like he's showing you a version of yourself you tried not to see, and you feel it then, a pain you didn't know was still living inside you, a garden of unsaid things. He reaches out, touches your chest, and suddenly you hear all of it, every word you never said, every time you stayed quiet when your voice could have changed. Everything, it crashes into you like a wave, but not to drown you, to remind you that silence isn't always peace. Sometimes it's fear. In a pretty costume, he removes the golden thread from his lips and finally speaks, not with anger but with clarity. He says they didn't hear you because you never let them. You locked your voice in a box and swallowed the key, but the key was never metal, it was courage. He places something in your hand, a single letter folded and sealed. On the outside is your name, not the name the world calls you, but the name only you know, the one that exists in the spaces between your thoughts. He nods and disappears. The corridor goes darker, but the mirrors begin to whisper. You turn and the cloth covering the mirrors starts to unravel one by one. Each mirror shows a moment you stayed quiet. Each one flickers like a flame fighting to stay lit, but now you see what could have been, not regrets but echoes of a voice that wanted to exist. You walk back to the original mirror, letter still clutched in your hand, and as you cross the threshold you hear something, your own voice whispering the one thing you needed to say back then, and suddenly it's Relier back in the center room, but there's a ringing in your ears, not unpleasant, like the aftershock of truth. And you know, now silence has power, but so does speaking. You face the next mirror, wondering what truth it holds and whether you're ready to say it aloud, but you step forward anyway because ready or not you're going. The you that chose to run. The mirror to your right is cracked, not shattered, just a single sharp vein slicing diagonally across the surface like a scar that never healed. It hums with something raw and filtered. You step into it anyway, and instantly you're hit with wind, cold, sharp air rushing past you like it's trying to cut through your skin and memory. At the same time you're standing on a mountainside, not snow-covered, not picturesque, but jagged, brutal, alone. The sky above is gray, bruised, and there's a figure sprinting across the slope. You know it's you even from a distance. Your gait, your panic, your refusal to look back. This is a version of you that ran from what you don't know yet. But he's not just running with his legs, he's running with his whole soul. You follow him. The wind picks up and the sky begins to howl. Not thunder, not voices, something in between, the kind of sound that's made of guilt and unfinished endings. You catch up. He stops, turns, and he looks like you, but weathered, thinner in spirit, like he's been carrying something that grew heavier with each mile. He is holding something. You get closer and realize it's a box, small, wooden, aged and locked. But the lock isn't metal, it's fear, thick and pulsing like a heartbeat. you don't want to admit, is yours. You ask him what's inside. He doesn't answer. He can't not, because he doesn't know, but because if he says it out loud, it becomes relucid. With him the wind comes and he finally opens the box. It doesn't creak. It sighs. Inside are all the things he ran from. You ran from people. You hurt people who hurt you. Truths you buried, dreams you labeled impossible, feelings you weren't brave enough to feel, love that you deemed unworthy. He tells you running saved me once, but it doesn't stop the thing that's chasing you, because what's chasing you is not outside, it's inside it. The version of yourself you never made peace with. You touch the box and it burns, not from heat but from memory. It shows you the moments you turned away when you should have turned inward. Every escape route you took was just a circle, leading you back here, back to the part of you that still doesn't know how to stay here. Stands, closes the box and sets it down, leaves it tanned, begins to walk, not run, for the first time in what feels like years. He's not running, and you understand. Running isn't cowardice sometimes. It's survival, but staying facing, that's healing you. Take one step and the mirror shatters behind you. Not violently, just quietly, like a page being turned, and suddenly you're in the room again. But there's wind in your lungs and a mountain in your chest. You rebreathing like you've never breathed before. The next mirror flickers and for the first time you don't step, you wait, because this time you want the mirror to come to you, and it does. The you that never let go. This mirror is warm, not to the touch but in the air around it, like it's been holding on to a memory that burns gently instead of fading. You don't walk through it this time. It opens like a door that remembers your name, and what greets you on the other side isn't a world but a room. Small, quiet room filled with light. There are no walls, just fabric curtains that ripple like ocean waves. There's music, faint, almost like it's being played from another life, and in the center is a figure sitting on a bed, their back to you. They reholding something. It's you, and in their hands is a photograph. It's aged at the edge on one corner, but you recognize it instantly. A moment you thought was gone, long buried under the weight of years and distractions. A childhood memory, person you lost, a love you never got to finish. This version of you never moved on, not in a tragic way but in a way that defies time. He's still here, still holding that moment like it just happened. You sit beside him and the air gets thicker, not with sadness but with presence. Everything feels more vivid. Hear your skin, your breath, your heartbeat, like this place is closer to the center of your soul than any other. He shows you the photograph and whispers, I never let go, not because I couldn't but because some things aren't meant to be released. Some pain becomes part of your shape, some joy becomes your shadow. You look at the image again and feel it return to you, not the picture, the feeling, the laughter in that moment, the smell of the air, the light in someone's eyes who's no longer in your life. It overwhelms you, not with sorrow but with gratitude, because now you remember fully, not just the event, but the impact. He stands, walks over to a wall and places the photo on it, but the wall isn't real, it's made of memory, and as the picture touches it, hundreds more appear, Polaroids of every significant second, moments that shaped you, moments that shattered you, moments you thought you forgot. They float, then fix themselves in place, creating a mural of your becoming. Heat looks at it like it's sacred, because it is. He tells Ula Tingo is not the same as forgetting, and holding on is not the same as hurting. There's beauty in remembering, even when it stings, especially then. You touch the photo one last time, and something in your chest clicks into alignment. A closure without goodbye, connection without chains. Then the curtain walls begin to fade. The room starts to dissolve, and you're left standing in a space made only of light and feeling. He's gone but not lost. He lives in that photo, in that version of you, still holding, still remembering. You step back through the mirror and your hands are glowing with the warmth of everything you've ever loved, and suddenly the room you return to doesn't feel like just a chamber of mirrors anymore. It feels like a soul map, each mirror a pulse, each reflection a lesson, each version a piece of the puzzle waiting to be touched. You exhale and walk to the next mirror, knowing now that even the pain has a place in your story and it deserves to be seen. Asterisk. The you that never grew up, Pew, approach the next mirror but, before your hand even reaches the surface it reacts not with light but with laughter, a giggle high-pitched, pure, and full of mischief, and just like that you're no longer an adult, not hairy or small, barefoot, wearing the pajamas you forgot you ever owned the room around. You has changed. It's a playground made of dreams, spinning wheels of cloud ladders, made of licorice slides that melt into rivers of color. Everything is larger than life, because Haru are once again the child you left behind. But you're not alone. There's another you, tiny, wild, bright, running in circles, chasing a paper kite that's way too high to catch. This version of you never grew up, not in the way the world expected. He refused to believe that magic was fiction. He never traded imagination for practicality. Never let the world beat the wonder out of him. He runs up to you, eyes beaming, and says to you, remember what it felt like to fly without wings? You don't answer, but your heart does. You remember racing down the hallway with a towel around your neck like a superhero. Kate believing shadows were alive, talking to imaginary friends like they were more real than most people, building castles out of cardboard and swearing they had secret passageways. He grabs your hand, pulls you toward a carousel that spins without sound, but instead of horses it has memories. You see yourself blowing candles, crying over a broken toy, laughing so hard milk shoots out your nose. Every seat is a forgotten joy. He tells you, you buried me, 'cause they told you I was childish, silly, useless, but I was the part of you that knew how to love without fear, create without apology, feel without filter. As the carousel spins faster, you see glimpses of your adult self, moments where you laughed but not fully, where you created but edited too much, where you loved but held back. He stops the ride, looks at you and says you became too careful, so careful that you forgot how to leap without a landing. And then he reaches into his pocket, pulls out a crayon, hands it to you. It's red, bright and broken. He says, use this to draw a door anywhere you hesitate, then draw it in the air, and to your shock it opens not to another room, but to a memento memory. You as a child under a blanket fort, holding a flashlight and reading stories to stuffed animals. You step inside yourself and suddenly everything slows. The world outside this blanket fort no longer matters. The wars, the bills, the betrayals, the expectations, all fat. A hero, safe, you're enough. You're hold the child. You hands you the flashlight and says it still yours. You never lost the light too, just forgot to use it to hold it, and the beam it casts is warm, alive. It cuts through all the adult shadows you carry, and you feel lighter, not smaller, but freer. When you exit the fort, the playground is fading, disappearing, just stepping back, making space for you to walk forward again, but this time with your child self beside you, not behind you. You step through the mirror, crayon in your pocket, flashlight in your grip, and a laugh rising in your throat. Back in the room, but it feels a little more like home now, place where all your pieces are allowed to play. You face the next mirror and wonder what other forgotten self is waiting to be remembered. Asterisk. The you that chose power over peace. The mirror ahead looks different. It pulses, not like a heartbeat, but like a warning. Deep red veins streak across its surface like molten cracks, barely holding something in. The moment you step through, the air changes. It's heavy, not with smoke or fog, but with consequence. Like everything here matters. More like every step echoes through 100 futures. You stand at the edge of a towering spire that climbs far above a burning city, skyscrapers reduced to ash and lightning, and at the center of this storm is a throne forged from shattered timelines, and sitting on Itis, you, but not the you. You recognize this version of you is wrapped in power, eyes glowing like dying suns. A crown floats above your head, not resting, hovering, daring gravity to touch it. To look around the world is silent obedience. Laughter, no rebellion, no uncertainty, only order, perfect, brutal order. This is the you that chose control over kindness, domination over compromise. This is the you that won, but at what cost? You walk closer, the throne pulses with energy, and the you on it watches with a gaze that cuts through skin and soul. He says they all wanted peace, but peace is weakness when it leaves you defenseless. He lifts a hand and the city reshapes itself. Buildings rise, rivers shift, laws write themselves into the sky. He doesn't just rule this world, he is this world. You ask him, what did you lose to gain all this? And he answers, everything that made me hesitate. He stands steps down from the throne, and every inch he walks sends ripples across reality. He's not angry, he's not evil, he's just tired of being small, tired of waiting, tired of the pain that comes with softness. He tells you, in every version of us there is power, but most of the time we trade it away for comfort, for validation, for silence. He chose not to trade, and now the power is all that remains, but so is the silence. You look around, there are no friends here, no lovers, no laughter, no messiness, only perfection carved from fear. He touches your shoulder and you feel it, the weight, the pulse, the endless hunger for more. It's seductive. You could stay, sit on the throne, take this world as yours, but a whisper is as it's not from him, it's from deep inside you. A smaller voice, one that says power is loud, but peace whispers the truth. You step back and he doesn't stop you. He nods on for a second. You see regret in his eyes, not for what he did, but for what he'll never feel again. You turn and the throne fades, the tower dissolves, and the city crumbles, not in destruction, but in release, like a memory finally letting go. You return to the mirror room, your hands tingling with untapped strength, but your heart steady, because now you know you could be that, but you don't have to. You face the next mirror and wonder, what would you become if you chose balance instead? Asterisk. The you that stayed hidden, this mirror doesn't shine, it absorbs light, like it's been swallowing everything around it for years. You approach and feel resistance, not physical but emotional, the kind of heaviness that settles in your bones when you know you're about to face the parts of yourself that hate being seen. Asterisk. And then it opens, no flash, no sound, just stillness. You standing in a room that doesn't exist in the outside world. There are no windows. Asterisk. No doors, just shadow, stacks of boxers' closets with locks and hundreds of curtains hanging from invisible ceilings. This place feels familiar, like the attic of your mind, the one you haven't visited in years, because every time you almost opened it, asterisk, you found an excuse not to. In the middle of the room is someone sitting with their back turned, knees pulled up to their chest, head down. You already know who it is. But the you no one else ever saw, the one you kept in here hidden because the world never made space for them, or maybe because you didn't know how to explain them. You walk closer, and as you do, the shadows start to shift. They whisper things you remember hearing once, things that stuck like splinter sear. Too much, you're too quiet, you're too weird, you're not enough, you're too emotional, too sensitive, too fragile. They echo from the walls, but they're not coming from the version of you on the floor. They coming from the people you gave power to, the ones who taught you to hide. You sit beside the hidden you, and the air thickens with silence, not the peaceful kind, the kind that's been holding its breath for years. You reach out, but don't touch, not yet. To just listen, and finally they speak, soft, shucky, but clear. They sigh, I was never broken, I just wasn't what they wanted me to be. Tears begin to trace your cheeks, not out of pity, but because you remember now all the times you dimmed your own light so someone else wouldn't feel uncomfortable, all the times you smiled when you wanted to scream, all the times you bit your tongue until it bled just to be liked, to be accepted, to be safe. The hidden you stands and pulls back one of the curtains. Behind it is a mirror, cracked but honest, and in its reflection you see both of you standing side by side, not one better than the other, just whole, complete. They reach out and finally you let them touch you on. In that moment you feel integration. You feel the walls inside you crumble, the false personest, practiced laughter, the polite suffering, all of it melting away because hiding protected you once, but now it's just keeping you from yourself. The room begins to fade, not into darkness but into light, like someone finally turned on the switch, and you see idle of edits, no costumes, just truth. You return to the main chamber, and Now the mirror you just stepped out of isn't black anymore, it glows dim, but warm because once something has seen it, can't be erased, only honored. You face the next mirror and this time there's no fear in your chest, only readiness to meet the next version, waiting behind the veil. Asterisk, the you that chose love over logic. The next mirror is soft not to the touch but in the way it feels like a melody you've heard before, but can't play, say. Warmth that reaches through your skin and into a part of you that's still healing as you step through. The air changes. There's no wind, no fire, no gravity even, just stillness. Stillness and light, golden, pink light falling from skies that don't exist, landing on a world made of emotion, not earth. It's not a place you can describe, only feel it breathes around. You'll like it, knows your name, and doesn't need to say it. Tanned, standing at the center of it, Alice you, but this you feels different, weightless, like they've been unburdened by the need to explain themselves. They turn to face you, but instantly you feel ite, the depth in their eyes, not intelligence, not calculation, not data, but heart love, not romantic love, but soul love, the kind that burns slowly and forever. This is the you that chose love then, when logic said no, Evan, when the world said that feelings would slow you down, make you weak, break youth. They didn't listen, they chose to feel everything fully, even the ugly parts, especially those you walk closer and they don't say anything at first, just reach out their hand and you take it immediately. You're hit with memory, not specific moments, but emotions, floods of them. The first time you trusted someone and they didn't let you fall there. Second time you did and they did, and still you opened up again because something in you knew love is worth breaking forth. They walk with you on. The world around you changes with every step. Now you're in a coffee shop where you once fell in love, now in a hospital room where you once held someone's hand as they let go, now in your childhood kitchen where someone once made you soup when you were sick. Call these places stitched together by love, not grand, not loud, but sacred. Day turn to you and finally speak. You tried so hard to understand everything, to predict, to plan, to protect yourself with logic, but love, real love, doesn't follow rules. It's chaos with meaning. It's risk that breathes you. Ask them, didn't you get hurt? Didn't you regret choosing feeling over safety? And they smile. Love, course I did, but regret is just a bruise. Love is the blood that keeps moving anyway. Fall to your knees, not in pain, in release, because all the things you thought made you weak were actually proof you were alive. They kneel with you, place something in your hand, a thread of light, like a filament pulled from the center of a star, and they say use this when you forget what matters, not to fix anything but to remind yourself why you try at all. You step back through the mirror and it doesn't close, it hums like it's still sending love through the cracks in your armor. You're back in the room and everything feels quieter now, and it just peaceful. You turn to the next mirror, knowing full well it might hurt, might shake you, might demand everything, but love taught you that pain is not the enemy, not anymore. Asterisk, the you that chose isolation. Mirror isn't broken, it's closed, locked in a way that feels personal. It doesn't call you, it waits patiently, like a room that's always been there but never wanted to be found. You reach out and it resists at first, then sighs open and you fall, but not down, inward, deep into a hollow space where sound doesn't carry, where voices go to die and thoughts echo back as questions instead of answers. You land on stone, not cold, just forgotten, like something that used to be warm but got tired of waiting. A small place, not a prison, not quite, but not a sanctuary either, just a box with walls that fit perfectly around one's soul, and inside itis, you, not the you that ran, not the one that screamed, but the one who stepped back and never returned. This version of you isn't angry or sad, just quiet eyes, hollow in the way that happens when you stop being seen for too long. Fear sitting in the corner, hiding, just existing without expectation. In the moment they look at you, you feel it, the ache, the weight of every canceled plan, every message typed but never sent, every time you said I'm fine when you weren't. They didn't choose isolation because they hated the world, they chose it because the world stopped feeling real, and This box, this stillness, safer than the noise outside. You sit beside them, and you both breathe slow breaths that sound like the first ones you've taken in years. They don't look at you, but they speak. I thought if I left no one would notice. I thought if I disappeared the world would adjust, and it did, but I didn't. Now close your eyes and remember every moment you pulled away, not because you didn't care, but because you cared too much, then didn't know what to do with the feeling. You remember letting calls go unanswered because you didn't want to talk, but because you didn't know how to explain what hurt you. Remember turning off the lights and pretending it was night just so you wouldn't have to face the day. This version of you takes your hand and it's cold but not lifeless, just unusing. Held the whisper. Connection isn't safe, but neither is silence. You know, and the walls begin to breathe, not fall, not crack, just soften. The box expands, turns into a hallway, one that leads back to the mirror, but as you walk you hear footsteps behind you. Thire following, because now they not staying here. Alanathar coming back with Euthon, if only as a whisper. You both step through on. Suddenly the mirror behind you isn't closed anymore. It's open like a window that might one day let the light in again. You turn to the next mirror, and something in you says, don't wait too long. Some parts of you are still waiting to be invited back. An asterisk. The you that never stopped believing. This mirror feels like breath, like that final exhale after crying, that quiet clarity you don't expect but welcome. You step forward, and the world greets you with light, not blinding, just enough to make you squint like you're waking up to something long dreamed. The ground beneath you is soft. It pulses with warmth like it knows your hair and is grateful. You look around and realize you're standing in a vast open field, but not one that belongs to Earth. The grass glows faintly blue and the sky is a painting still being finished. Swirls of pink and gold and silver bleeding into one another. A sun in the shape of a spiral hangs above, and at the center of it, all you see a figure standing on a hill holding something high in the air. It's you, but this version is brighter, not in appearance but in energy and presence. They radiate something you haven't felt in a long time. Faith, not religion, not superstition, but belief, raw and unshaken. They see you and smile, not with pride, but with recognition, like they always knew you'd make it here eventually. You walk up the hill. The wind carries voices as you move, but not words, feelings, memories, hopes. They swirl around you like old friends, and when you reach the top, this version of you says you stopped believing in things, didn't you? And you nod because you didn't. Dreams and people, in change in yourself. You ask them, how did you keep going? How did you keep believing when everything went wrong? And they answered, because belief isn't about what's true, it's about what could be. And I never gave up on could. They point to the object in their hand. It's not a weapon, not a shield. It's a thread glowing with the light of every dream you've ever had, ever the ones you gave up. Anis, especially those they handed to you, and it wraps around your wrist, not like a chain, like a reminder. They say, asterisk, you thought giving up would protect you, but it only made you smaller. Belief doesn't ask you to be right, it just asks you to try. You look down the hill and suddenly you see 100 versions of you, all climbing up from all the mirrors you've passed through. The child, the runner, the lover, asterisk, the one who stayed silent. All of them ascending, all of them carrying pieces of the same belief that somehow you are still becoming, still worth becoming. You stand beside your brighter self. Feel the wind shift, asterisk. It carries you gently back to the mirror, back to the room, but this time your feet don't touch the floor. You float light as the thread around your wrist, because belief has weight, but also wings. You land and look around. The mirrors pulse as if they too believe in you. Now you face the next one, knowing the journey ahead isn't just about reflection anymore. It's about reclamation of all you ever were and all you still could be, asterisk. The you that broke the rules. This mirror doesn't reflect you, it reflects defiance, a shimmer of rebellion pulsing beneath its surface. The edges are sharp, like it was never meant to be touched. Gently it wants to be challenged. It wants to be questioned. You step through and the world you land in is chaotic, but not ugly, beautiful, chaosy. Sky painted with fire and waterfalls, buildings twisted into impossible spiral signs and languages you've never seen but somehow understand. This place feels like a mind turned inside out, no logic, no permission, just creation, pure, unfiltered reality made by someone who said no to everything. And you already know this is youth. You who stopped asking for permission. You who broke every rule not for the sake of breaking them but because they realized the rules were the cajand. They were never made for you anyway. You see them standing atop a tower made of books. They never read, wearing clothes that shift with their mood, hair, wild eyes, brighter than the stars above. They see you and laugh, a sound that carries no shame, only freedom. You climb to meet them and they offer you a hand. Their palm is marked scars from every boundary they shattered, every wall they walked through. Instead of around you, ask, wasn't it dangerous? And they nod. Of course, it was, but safety was a slow death. And I wanted to live loud. They'd show you the world. They built fragments of laws. They rewrote choices others feared to make. They bent reality to make space for themselves, because the one they were given didn't fit to walk with them. And they point out versions of youth. One who stayed in the box, the one who followed the path, the one who abated, one faded, not gone, but smaller, less vivid. And this version turns to you on, says you were never meant to fit in that ache you felt. That restlessness, it wasn't weakness, it was a map pulling you toward the life that was waiting beyond the shoulder. And the sham, you feel something bloom inside you, a wildness, not destruction, not recklessness, but truth unchained. You ask them, what was the first rule you broke? They smile and say, the one that said I had to be one thing forever. Then they take a piece of sky and hand it to you. It glows in your hands and begins to shift. Shape, it becomes whatever you believe in most, and you realize that's what this mirror teaches you are the rule maker. Now you return to the room, sky fragments still warm in your grasp, and the mirrors lean slightly as if bowing, not in submission but in recognition, because now you are no longer a visitor. Here you are a builder, and the next mirror knows it. Can't lie to you anymore, because you won't follow its rules. Will write your own asterisk. The you that watched it all burn. This mirror hums low, like a siren buried in the earth. Its glow isn't bright, it's smoldering, a slow ember pressed beneath black glass. You step into it, tanned. The temperature shifts immediately, heat in the bones, not the skin, the kind of heat that doesn't burn your body, it scorches your history. You open your eyes to a city in ruin, not ash but memory, streets cracked like dried skin, skyscrapers leaning like tired giants. The sky above is thick with smoke and sunless light, but what's haunting is the silence, not the absence of sound, but the echo of everything that used to be here, gone. At the center of it, Alice, a fire still burning, contained in a perfect circle of stone. And standing by Etis, youth's version is rise, rimmed in soot, fingernails blackened but come grounded in something you can't name. They don't cry, they don't speak, they simply stare into the fire like it's the last thing keeping them whole. You approach them. Air is thick with grief, and something older than grief resolve you. Ask them what happened here. They don't answer with words. They show you a vision of a life where everything collapsed, where relationships, frayed plans, failed dreams, cracked open and bled out on the pavement, where hope packed its bags and left in the middle of the night. No goodbye. Absence. This is the version of you who survived the fallout, who watched it all burn and stayed to bury the ashes. They look at you and the eyes aren't empty, they are clear like pain boiled everything unnecessary away, and only truth remains. You sit beside them and the fire shifts. It shows images, flashes of loss, of endings, of moments where you thought this is it, this is where it all stops, but the fire also shows you standing up again and again, each time slower, more fractured but still moving. They finally speak, soft like paper turning. I didn't survive because I was strong. I survived because I ran out of ways to break. And when you hit bottom enough times, you start digging, and sometimes you find light down there. You ask them, did anything good survive? They smile and pull something from their coat. It's a flower wilted but alive color, bleeding from the edges like it refuses to give up. They place it in your hand, it's warm and pulses, like it's still trying. They say this world ended, but I didn't end. Maybe that's enough. You watch the fire together, not for answers, but for witness, because sometimes all you need is to be seen standing in the wreckage still. Breathing still here. The city doesn't rebuild. As you leave it doesn't have to. It stays broken because not all ruins need to be repaired, some need to be remembered. You step back into the mirror room, and your fingers still hold the flower, still warm, still pulsing. The other mirrors don't judge, they flicker gently, like even the ones you haven't entered understand. Now that survival's its own kind of truth, you look to the next mirror not as a question, but as a continuation, ready for the next self. Because no version of you is more sacred than the one who rose from the fire, asterisk, the you that became someone else. The next mirror doesn't shine, it reflects nothing, not your face, not the room, not even light. It just stares back at you, empty, waiting. You step into it without thought because something in your gut tells you this is the one you've avoided your whole life. One that doesn't show a moment, but a choice, a single decision that changed everything. You open your eyes and you're standing in a hallway filled with doors, thousands of them, each marked with a name, but none of them are yours. You walk slowly, reading the names, strangers, characters, Laylas's masks, all names you once wore. Could have. Each door is a self you became to survive something. Some are louder, some are silent, but they all hum with identity, temporary, necessary, false. And then you find one, a door you recognize, but not because of the name, because of the weight you touch it. And the door swings open without resistance. Inside is a life that looks familiar, too familiar. You're in a room with your family, but you're not saying what you feel. You're agreeing to things you don't want. You're laughing when you're actually suffocating. You being good, being expected, being digestible. And that's when you see them, the version of you that lived this life fully, that never questioned it, never broke the pattern. There, dressed like you, move like you, sound like you, boat. Everything about them is practice scripted, safe. They look at you and for a moment they smile, but it's hollow. And you see it. They don't hate you, they envy you, because you walked away and they didn't. You ask them why didn't you stop pretending? And they answered, because they clapped when I did it, right? Because no one asked who I really was, because it was easier to perform than to disappoint you. Both sit down and the air is thick with exhaustion, the kind that doesn't come from doing too much, but from being someone else for too long. They tell you I wore this identity like a costume, but after a while I forgot where the mask ended and I began. You look around the room and notice mirrors on the walls, but they're warped. They show reflections of what others expected, not what was real. Stand and one by one you smash them, not in anger and clarity. Shatter sends a ripple through the world, and the self in front of you begins to change. Their posture softens, their eyes clear, their voice returns, and for the first time they speak with truth. I want to come home to myself. You take their hand and walk out the door together, and as you do all the names fade into till only yours remains, not the one the world gave youth, one you found inside you. Return to the mirror room and something in you feels real, anchored, like the ground has finally accepted your weight, because now you're not just visiting selves, reclaiming them, each one step closer to remembering who you really face the final mirror, the one waiting at the center, and you already know this is the last version you need to meet, asterisk. The room shifts before you even move. The final mirror, it doesn't glow, it doesn't rip, it just exists quiet still, like it's been waiting for you since the beginning. Not because it wanted to show you something, but because it knew you. Do you finally be ready to see that you don't need it to walk forward, not with hesitation, not with curiosity, with knowing? And the closer you get, the more the mirror fades, the frame softens, the edges blur, until all that's left is you standing in front of nothing and everything you reach out and your hand doesn't pass through. It touches air, then light, then warmth, because this final reflection is not a version of you, it's the source, the origin, the self, before the splits bay, for the choices bay, for the fraxius, s, the one who remembers not just the past but the purpose you, close your eyes and there is no vision this time only memory. You remember being a child and wondering who you'd become you. Remember being lost and pretending you weren't too. Remember lying awake, asking questions no one else could answer you. Remember making mistakes and thinking they defined you, and then you remember this moment, this truth, that you were never broken, never too much, never not enough. You were just becoming damned. Now asterisk you have become. You stand in the center of all the mirrors and feel them lean in not as walls, not as cages but as witnesses every version of youth. Runner the dreamer, the silent one though rebel, the believer, the broken, the healed, all of them are you, none of them are the whole. Youth they are pieces, shards, refractions, but the whole the truth. Original was always here waiting to be remembered, not through mirrors, but through choice. You step back and the mirrors begin to dissolve one by one, not in sadness, and release. You don't need them anymore because now you carry all of them inside. Youth mirror room fades in. You're standing in your own body again in the life you know, but it feels different, not new, just more yours, and the voice you hear now is not coming from around you but from within. It says welcome back, and this time you say it to yourself out loud. Welcome back asterisk. It begins with a hallway, endless, silent, a corridor made not of walls but of shelves, towering shelves stretching into a house's ceiling, each shelf lined with books not labeled, not sorted, just there waiting. The air smells of paper and ash, not decay but memory, and standing in the centers, you holding a card, small warning, faded but one word remains clear, requested, a single request from a version of you who forgot what they were asking for you. Move forward. The books seem to react, shuffling themselves, whispering titles that sound like dreams or warnings. You run your hand along the spine, each one hums softly, a heartbeat, a life, a possibility. Then you find it tucked deep in a shelf with no name, a book that doesn't belong, its cover stitched from thoughts not yet formed, its pages sealed shut by silence, but you know it's yours. You pull it free and the air stills, the hallway darkens, not in fear and reverence, because this book was never supposed to exist, and yet here it is alive. You open it, the first page is blank, so is the second and the third, but as you turn the ink begins to appear slowly, line by line, memory by memory, not from the past but from lives you've never lived, moments that never happened but could have. You see yourself as a certain saving a life in a rain-soaked hospital. You see yourself as a thief slipping through shadows in a city that doesn't exist. You see yourself as a painter in the mountains, as a monk in the desert, a voice on the radio guiding lost travelers home. Page bleeds with feeling, not fact, and you realize this isn't a recorded essay. Permission to be, to have been, to become. You flip faster now, hungry, desperate to see what else you could have been, and then the book stops, the final page, one sentence, a cursory bar, the author now, and the page is blank. It's not asking you to remember it, asking you to write, to drop the book, and the hallway changes. Books begin to fall, not in chaos and surrender, they dissolve into light, and the shelves crumble inward until all that remains is the book in your hand and the blank page inside. You walk forward into the dark, into the silence, and begin to write, not because you know how it ends, but because it's finally your turn to decide. Asterisk, you feel them before you see theme. Presence tucked between pages in time, the moment you finish writing that first line in the book that wasn't supposed to exist. The air shifts, the dust rearranges like something is waking up, not startled, just summoned, and then there they are, the librarian, not old, not young, not man or woman, just presence, wrapped in robes made from chapters, eyes deep like margins filled with secrets no reader ever caught. They hold no scrolls, no pens, no ledgers, only a single key strung around their neck, forged from a spine of a book that was never written. They walk slowly, like gravity doesn't quite apply to them, and When they speak, the sound is silence, but it rings inside your mind with perfect clarity. They say you shouldn't be here, but you are, so I must show you. You ask them, show me what, and they turn without answer, because in this place, answers are earned by walking, not by asking. You follow them deeper into the library, where the books begin to change. Some are glowing, some are locked shut, some are bleeding ink into the air, and then they stop at a door, a circular frame with no hinges, just a pulse. The librarian touches it and it opens. Inside is a chamber, unlike the rest. This one is filled not with books but with mirrors, hundreds, thousands each, one facing another, each one showing a different version of you. Looking green jinging, overwhelmed. It's like standing in a storm made of yourself, and then you see it at the center of it. Alice, the librarian again, but not the one beside you. Another and another and another. There is a librarian for each version of you, and all of them are watching, tending, curating, protecting, because each life you could have lived is a book, and each one needs care. You look at the one beside you and ask, have you read all of me? They nod one solemn way. Remember you even when you don't. You feel something then, not pride, not fear, just a strange comfort, the kind that comes from being known completely without being judged. Walk you to one of the mirrors. It flickers, shows you as you are, then changes, shows you as you once were, then again as you might become, and then again as something you don't recognize. You step closer, and the glass breathes like lungs, remembering how to hold grief. The librarian speaks again. This is the cost of curiosity. Once you see yourself fully, you cannot pretend to be small again. The weight of all your possibilities will follow you. You turn to them and ask, why? Show me this, and they reply, because you opened the book, because the moment you turned that first page, you became responsible for your own truth, and now you must carry it not as burden but as origin. They place the key into your hand and say nothing more, but in the silence you understand this. Keys for a door, it's for remembering, for opening every part of you that ever wanted to be seen. You leave the chamber and the mirrors dimmed up. Not in dismissal, in reverence, you return to your book and find it heavier, not because of pages but because of meaning. Librarian bows, not to honor you but to honor the choice you made to look deeper. You walk back into the library, and behind youth mirrors whisper one last thing, we are still you, we always will be. Asterisk. You continue down a passageway that wasn't there before. It's darker here but not dangerous. Forbidden. The librarian doesn't follow, they watch from a distance. Says you approach a section of the library untouched by light. The shelf looms ahead of you, built from a different material, not wood, not metal, not stone, but something alive. It breathes, inhales your presence, and exhales something colder than fear. Curiosity, dressed as warning. There's no label here, no Dewey Decimal System, no clever carving zone. Leah sign small carved into the air itself. It reads, not yet 10. Still your hands move like they've been waiting for this moment. Since your first breath you reach toward a book on the edge of the shelf. It pulses before you touch it once, twice, then settles. It allows you on. The moment your fingers grip its spine you feel every version of yourself flinch. This shelf wasn't meant to be seen by most versions of you, but you are not most. You pull the book free. It's warm, too warm, like it's remembering something that hurts. You open it and you see nothing, not a blank page, an empty one, not forgotten. This isn't a record, it's a redaction, and you're holding the story of a life you once lived, but chose to forget. Not a mistake, not a failed timeline, a life you buried completely, because the pain of remembering it would have broken you in the one you now inhabit. You flip through and slowly the pages begin to bleed. Not ink, emotion, terror, Greta Jane love. Too big to hold loss, too deep to explain this. Life was short, violent, beautiful, and incomplete. You died too soon. In this one, not from age, from consequence, the kind that follows choices to bold and love too impossible. And somewhere in the margins you see a name. It's yours, but spelled differently, like a whisper from a mouth that barely survived, saying it to fall to your knees, because now it's coming back, not in scenes, but in pieces. like a mirror you smashed inside your mind. Long ago, you remember the face you loved, the one that didn't make it with you. You remember the child you almost had, the one that didn't arrive. You remember the silence, that final silence, the one that followed your last breath, and how it wasn't peaceful, it was interrupted. This book is sacred because it was your undoing, and you chose to let it go, to continue in a life that would never recall this one until now, until you broke the rules and touched the shelf that shouldn't be touched. You hear a voice not from outside, from within, sing, are you sure? Are you sure you want to carry this? Because once it returns, it does not leave you. Look down at the pages, gently close the book, not in fear and respect. You place it back, and as your hand leaves the spine, the shelf seals like it was never there, but it was in. Now you never not know. You turn, and the librarian is gone, but something remains, a glimmery shadow, a thought that even the forgotten versions of you are still part of the whole. You walk back through the island. Every book seems to lean slightly, not in judgment, but in solidarity, because now you remembered the cost of becoming, and you're still choosing to continue. Asterisk. The shelves begin to thin as you walk, not fewer books, just more space between them, more silence, but not the heavy kind. This is a silence that listens, that waits, and then you see it. Single podium, not grand, not gold, just smooth and simple, like it's been here longer than the library itself. Resting on top is a book, closed bound in a cover that shimmers like oil on water. It hums quietly, and etched into its surfaces a symbol not from any alphabet you know, but it pulls at you like something once known long before language began. You reach out, fingers trembling, and open it. No words, just marks, lines, curves, dots, and waves, not written, breathed. Asterisk. The moment your eyes land on them, they begin to move, not on the page, inside your head, inside your chest. The symbols speak, but not with sound. They speak in feeling, in memory, instinct to read, and suddenly, asterisk, you remember not a moment, not a place, but a knowing of a time before you knew how to speak, before you were taught how to think, before you were told what made sense. You feel it stir inside you, a language older than thought, the language you were never taught, but always knew. The symbols whisper things like you are not alone, you never were, you were not wrong to feel too much. The ache was the message, the quiet was the signal. They say your tears were not weakness, they were the only way your soul could speak without translation. The longer you read, the deeper it goes, not into your mind, into your mind, into your being. This language doesn't explain, it unlocks and doors you didn't know you built inside yourself begin to open one by one, rooms of emotion you sealed shut, now blooming rooms of wonder you once visited in dreams, now inviting you in rooms of grief, still echoing the names of those who left, now gently falling silent. The language speaks again, not with lines, but with a single feeling. Welcome back, and suddenly you realize you were never broken, you were just misread. Your soul speaks in metaphor, but the world only listens to instructions. You weren't lost, you were untranslated, and this book, this language, this moment is a remembering of your original voice. You close the book not to end it, but to protect it, to press your hand to your chest and feel the symbols linger there softly like ink under the skin of your truth. You turn away from the podium, and the space around it vanishes, like it was never there, but it wasn't. Now it always will be inside. You walk on, and every step feels lighter, not because the burden is gone, but because you finally know how to carry it in your own tongue, in your own truth. Asterisk. The floor beneath you shifts, not with movement, but with intentions. Step leaves a faint mark behind, not footprints, words, sentences that form from your presence alone. You try to read them, but the moment you look back, they vanish, not erased, just absorbed, as if the library is recording your path, not in paper, but in purpose. You move deeper and find a room without walls, just open air and floating parchment sheets, suspended mid-air, turning slowly, each blank but waiting, and at the center of them a single fountain of ink, floating upward, defying gravity, thin, black threads spiraling gently into the nothingness above you. Step forward, and the ink moves toward you. A drop rests just above your forehead. Doesn't fall, it waits. You reach out, touch it, and it flows not down your skin but into your mind, your chest, your hands, and suddenly, the parchment begins to fill. Words appear in a language you didn't know you could write but somehow always understood. Write your thoughts, but not the ones you're thinking now, the ones you forgot you thought, the ones buried beneath politeness and pressure and pretending. You step forward and another page unfurls. This time it writes moments, snapshots of times you said nothing but felt everything, times you laughed but wanted to, times you walked away when you wanted to stay, times you broke your own heart to protect someone else's. Ink doesn't accuse, it documents with tenderness, as if your silence was sacred, as if your inner chaos deserved to be seen without being fixed. You keep walking and more parchment fills the sky until the air itself feels like a storm of your forgotten self, and at the center of it, Alice, a single page glowing, pulsing, waiting for your hand. You take it, and without pen or thought it begins to write, but this time it's not writing your past, it's writing your choice right now, this moment, your decision to see yourself fully, to stop editing who you are, to make others comfortable, to stop dimming so the world doesn't feel too exposed. Writes, I am here, I have always been here, and I will no longer be silent about my truth. You fold the page, place it against your chest, and it melts into you, burning, becoming the ink now lives in your blood, your bones, your breath. You walk out of the parchment room, and as you do, every unwritten story floats behind you, not to haunt you, to follow you, to be written when you're ready, because now you carry the ink. You are the author and your story is still unfolding. Asterisk. You notice at the moment you step into the next corridor, the sound of everything stops. No pages rustling, no books whispering, no breath in your lungs. You try to step forward, but your body doesn't move, not because it's frozen, because time is the hallway ahead, glows faintly blue, a light that feels stretched like it was meant to flicker, but got caught in the act, and floating just beyond reaches. A doormat open mid-cloth, held perfectly in the moment between decision and outcome. You realize this isn't a hallway, it's a trap, a chamber where time itself came to rest, a space between seconds, between baits, between cause and effect. You drift toward the door, no footsteps, just motion guided by thought, and when you cross its threshold, the world doesn't greet you, it waits for you to notice it. To re in a circular room, glass walls, a dome of stars above you, but none of them move. They hang suspended like light caught in the throat of reality, and in the center of the room is a clock, not one made of gears or hands, but of mirrors, 12 shards, circling a hollow center, each one reflecting a different version of you at a different age, a different moment, frozen, not posed alive but paused. You walk slowly, each step revealing a reflection, your first heartbreak, your first triumph, the moment you gave up, the moment you started again, a fight you lost, a truth you never told, a kiss that meant too much, a silence that meant even more. Reach mirror, ticks once when you pass, not a sound, feeling like a heartbeat locked in stasis, and when you complete the circle, the center of the clock pulses, and you see ita 13th reflection, one that doesn't belong on the face but in I to know, in this very moment, standing in the eye of all your timelines, not past, not future, just present. Sand. Suddenly everything begins to move again. The stars blink, the mirrors shift, hand time exhales like it's been holding its breath, waiting for you to arrive, because this room wasn't a prison, it was a question. Are you ready to live without looking backward? Are you ready to let go of time as your master and claim it as your companion? You close your eyes and let the ticking surround you, each secunda permission to begin again, to forgive, to remember without staying, to hope without fear. You touch the 13th mirror and it doesn't reflect, it absorbs you. Walk forward and the mirror embraces you, and as you pass through, you feel the weight of every second you once lost. Or turn, not to haunt, to offer another chance. You step back into the library, and this time the lights move with you in rhythm, because now you don't move through time, time moves through you, asterisk. You move through a narrow corridor, now its walls made not of shelves, but of parchment stitched together, covering the space like skin stretched over old bone. Every few steps say word bleeds through faint sentences, trapped beneath the surface. You try to read them, but they fade as your eyes touch them, like they were written only to be forgotten. And ahead, desk, nothing extravagant, just a writing table set beneath. A soft cone of amber light dust hangs in the air, frozen like it too is waiting for something to finish or to begin. Behind the desk sits someone hunched over a book. They don't look up, not yet there. Fingers move slowly, writing, then stopping, then writing again, then pausing until finally you reach them and realize you know them because it's you, not another version, not a reflection, but the deepest part of youth, one who always wanted to write the story but never believed they were allowed to. You lean over their shoulder and see what they're writing. It's your story, every page of your life, every moment mapped out in meticulous detail, but something's off. The end of the book is torn out, not blank, removed, carefully ripped just before the final act. To ask why? Stop here, why? Erase the ending, and without looking up they speak, because I was afraid the story would end badly, so I chose to leave it unfinished. Sit across from them and see the fear in their eyes, not of failure but of finality. The idea that once you finish the story you have to live with how it ends. They slide the book toward you and place a pen beside it, still warm from their hand, and they say, but maybe the ending wasn't mine to write, maybe it's yours now. You stare at the torn edge and something inside you trembles because you remember the moments you paused your life to keep it safe, to keep it from going wrong, the relationships you didn't pursue, the choices you never made, the truths you never spoke, all to avoid an ending you couldn't control. But know where you are, with ink in your blood and a blank space where your future should be. You pick up the pen and for a moment your hand refuses to move, because writing the next word means believing in what comes after, but you do it anyway. Not because you know how it ends, but because not writing is worse than writing wrong. You begin and the torn edge begins to heal, not perfectly, but truthfully. The room fills with a soft breeze, pages lifting gently at. If the book itself is exhaling, you look up and the other you is gone, not vanished, integrated. The desk remains empty, now waiting for whatever you write next. You leave the room and for the first time you don't look back because you've stopped trying to protect the ending. You're ready to live it, asterisk. The path turns sharply and you're no longer surrounded by shelves. You're in a cavernous chamber dimly lit by lanterns that burn without flame. The ceiling is lost in shadows and the walls pulse with slow breaths of ancient memory. In the middle of it all stands a figure, cloaked in deep violet robes, their face hidden, their movements fluid, purposeful. They are not reading, not writing, not watching. They are sorting carefully, tenderly handling delicate scrolls, wrapped in golden wire, stacking them into invisible shelves or sealing them in translucent containers that shimmer like frozen smoke. You step closer and suddenly you hear everything, not with your ears but with your chest, with your spine, with the back of your throat. The air is heavy with stories that were almost lived lives that reached the edge of becoming, then turned back. They are futures that never happened but could have, and the archivist tends to them like they're holy. They turn to you slowly, their face still hidden, but their presence familiar, like someone you met once in a dream you never woke up from. They speak, you've been expected. You ask them, what is this place? And they reply, this is where the futures go when you choose not to follow them, not with regret, not with blame, just with reverence. You walk to one of the floating scrolls, and as your fingers brush it unravels, revealing an entire life. You could have lived a future where you moved to that city, took that leap, said yes to that impossible thing, and it's beautiful, roomacy, but it feels like yours even though it never was. You ask the archivist, do you ever resent me for the futures I abandoned? They shake their head once. Never. My work is not to judge what you didn't become, to honor that you could have, that you dared to imagine it, that somewhere even for a moment you dreamed big enough to cast a shadow in time. They guide you to a massive orb suspended in silence, a galaxy of threads woven inside, and they say every thread is a version of you that asked what if, and your job is not to follow them all. Your job is to keep asking, keep wondering, keep imagining, because the moment you stop the archive dims, you press your hand to the orb and instantly feel every choice you didn't make not as failure but as chorus, a harmony of what ifs that form the backdrop to your now you. Look at the archivist and they offer you a vial small glowing faintly inside each a swirl of one possible future, still breathing, still waiting. You take it not to change your path but to carry the echo, to remember that you are always more than one story, always many, all unfolding in parallel silence. You leave the chamber and behind youth futures flicker softly like candles that never resent being unlit, just grateful they were imagined at all. Asterisk. The corridor is narrow, now quiet, in a different wail, like something is listening not to your footsteps but to your thoughts. You follow the turn and suddenly you're standing before a pedestal, not stone, not wood, just energy, like purpose floating just above Itis, a book, but this one isn't dusty or ancient. It breathes, the pages flutter softly like lungs rising and falling in sleep. You don't reach out to, don't have to. The book notices you first and opens not to a beginning, to a middle a passage you don't remember writing, but no, by heart it reads. And in the moment they forgot who they were, the world reminded theme, a chill climbs your spine because the words on the page are your thoughts from now, from this exact second. It continues recording every flicker of doubt, every pulse of awe, every unspoken fear you're pretending not to feel. It writes your breath, your heartbeat, your silence, and then it begins to ask, not aloud, but through ink, like a conversation written in real time. What are you still hiding from yourself? You try to answer, but the book already knows it. Writes, why do you still question your worth? You want to look away, but your name is on every line, not the one the world gave youth, one you only use in dreams. Book flips back to a childhood moment you tried to forget, and it writes what you felt, what you feared, what you wished someone had said to you, and then writes it now. You deserved to be loved, then you still do. You fall to your knees because you can't lie to a book that writes your soul. It keeps going, revealing the nights you cried into a pillow, the mornings you faked strength, the seconds you stood on the edge of becoming and turned back, not because you didn't believe in yourself, but because you didn't think anyone else would. Then it stops, swan, blank page, waiting, and it writes note. Your turn. You pick up the pen that wasn't there before, and you start to write, not your achievements, not your highlights, but your truthium, scaradium. Want to be free, I don't know how, but I won't stop. And as the words hit the page, you feel lighter, not because the weight is gone, but because it's finally shared with the one part of you that never left the witness, the recorder, the you that never needed approval to be reused. Close the book and it doesn't vanish, it slides into your chest, becomes part of your pulse. You walk back into the library, but now every step you take leaves a word behind, not as a trail but as a testimony that you were here and you were honest, and that matters. Asterisk. The corridor widens, slowly now to give you more space, but to give something else room to breathe ahead. Soft glow pulses against a wall that doesn't seem like part of the library at all. It's smoother too, smooth, not carved and not constructed, just there like it always was, and in its center a single door, no handle, no hinges, just a vertical seam in the light to approach, and immediately something in your chest begins to tighten, not from fear, from knowing this is not a door you open casually. This one opens only once, and only when you're ready. A voice whispers through the stillness, not from behind the door, from inside you. It says, beyond this is a truth you cannot unsee. Oh, hesitate, because you've been down so many paths, already seen so many selves faced, so many forgotten things, but this feels different, permanent. You press your palm against the seam and the door does not swing. It dissolves like it never truly existed, only waited for you to decide in what lies beyond Itis. Not a hallway, not a chamber, not a mirror, it's a memory you're most private one, the moment when everything in your current life almost changed, a single choice that you buried, because to admit it would have meant rewriting everything you walk inside and you. See it, a version of you standing by a window, phone in hand, tears in your throat and a question on your tongue. You never asked a truth, you never said a departure, you never took it. Was the night you almost left, or the morning you almost stayed, or the message you almost sent? It's different for everyone, but you know exactly what yours is, and this room has been holding it ever since. You stand beside the version of you that still remembers what you almost did. You whisper, why didn't we? And they don't answer, because you already know. For loyalty, guilt, hope, they all blur together. You kneel, place your hand on the floor, and a symbol forms, a ring of light, a timeline sealed shut, not because it was wrong, but because you were afraid of being right. The room doesn't judge you, simply holds you until you finally breathe deeply enough to let go. You stand, walk to the window, and outside you see what could have been a life that didn't happen, a version of you that never arrived, but was so close it hurts, but not like a wound, more like stretching a muscle that's been tight for years. You place your hand on the glass and it softens, it doesn't shatter, it becomes water, and your reflection stares back, not the almost tooth, now youth, one who came here to remember that even choices left unmade are part of your story. You step back through the door and it closes, not to shut you out, but to let you move on, because doors that open only on certain endings sire acknowledgments, and you are still writing the rest. You return to the shelves, but now you notice other doors tucked between pages, disguised as titles, waiting for when you're ready. But for now you walk on, wiser, not because you chose the right path, but because you finally looked at the one you didn't. Asterisk, you sense it before you see it, a rhythm pulsing softly through the air, not like a heartbeat, more like a sentence that hasn't found its period. You follow the sound through aisles that begin to loop. You notice it now. You past the same stack, 3 times the same title, blinking faintly from the spine of a book you don't remember reading, but it's always open, always whispering. You reach it, a lone book resting on a pedestal surrounded by mirrors. The cover is familiar, it's one you've read before, lived before, finished, or so you thought. You lean in and the title shifts, not in letters, in feeling, the book of what you thought was over. You hesitate because you know this book, it was a chapter you closed long ago. Love that ended, a dream that died, a version of yourself you said goodbye to, but the book is open again, still writings, still breathing, as if it never accepted your ending. You touch the page and instantly it floods you with scenes you'd bear it, not because you didn't care, but because you needed to move on. You see the final argument, the last embrace, the doors that closed, the roads not taken, and yet the page beneath your fingers pulses with new ink, new lines forming as you read. Thema, continuation, the characters you thought were gone, still speaking, still acting, still wanting something. You ask aloud, how can this still be happening? A voice replies, because some stories don't end, they evolve, they shift form. You look up and your reflection in the surrounding mirrors begins to change. It cycles through your past selves, the one who let go too soon, the one who held on too long, the one who pretended not to care, the one who still does. You close the book, but it opens again, persistent like grief that arrives uninvited, like joy that doesn't need permission. You whisper, what do you want from me? And the book responds, finish me or begin again, but do not leave me unread. And you realize there are stories in your life you called finished, but only because you were quadna, because they were completely sit with the book, not to close it but to listen. And the pages turn slowly, as if waiting for you to catch your breath. And maybe that's the point, some stories don't end because they aren't supposed to. They circle, they return, they offer second chances or deeper meaning. You place your hand over the open page and let the ink wrap around your fingers, not to write but to remember that letting go and continuing are not oppositissimitis, the same act. To stand, leave the book open and walk away, not in abandonment but in trust that It will keep writing until you're ready to return, and when you do it, won't say where have you been it, will say let's begin again. Asterisk the hallway narrows again, but this time not because space is tight, because the energy here thickens like a fog made of unfinished thoughts. You move slower, not from fear, from weight. Asterisk the weight of all the beginnings that never found their middles, that middles that never reached their ends. Asterisk, you turn a corner and there, Isa, vast open chamber filled with shelves, all half-stocked, each holding books, bet none of them complete. Some are missing their endings, those missing titles. Some have no chapters at all, only prologues over and over again, and above the entrance etched faintly in Lite message reads, for those who walked away too soon. You step inside, then the air tastes like potential sharp electric butt abandoned you. Pick up one of the books. It starts strong, a voice full of fire and conviction, a dream chasing the sky, but halfway through it stops mid-sentencing note with failure, with exhaustion. You try another same thing, an idea born, a plan begun, a story unfolding, then silence. You look around and suddenly see the outlines of people, faint ghosts of who started these pages. Some cry, some pace, some sit with their heads in their hands. None of them finished what they began. They remain here, not trapped, just paused. You ask aloud, why didn't they finish? And a voice replies from behind you, because finishing means facing the fear that it still might not be enough. You turn and there stands a woman, or maybe a man, or maybe a reflection. Their form shifts with every blink, like they're made of every abandoned ambition that ever existed. They guide you deeper into the shelves and show you a book with your name, not one you've seen before, a project, a relationship, a belief that you gave up on, not in anger. In silence you open it, and the pages are stunning, but half told. You remember the night you stopped, the moment you doubted the voice that whispered, who do you think you are? And louder than that, the silence of no one telling you to keep going. You fall to your knees, because this room is not just unfinished stories, as unfinished versions of youth, ones who almost made it but didn't know how to try again. The guide kneels with you and says you don't have to finish everything, but some stories still want to be told. You ask Themis, it too late? And they smile. Too late is a myth invented by fear. You close the book gently and hold it to your chest. It doesn't vanish. It, you know now, you don't have to finish it today, but you do have to return one page at a time. You leave the chamber, but this time it follows you, shufflet, like a voice you once silenced, learning how to speak again. You walk forward, not with certainty, but with commitments to finish something, anything that still lives inside you, even if no one sees it, heaven, if no one claps, because some stories deserve to be whole. Asterisk. The hallway before you disappears. It doesn't collapse, it simply fades, as if the concept of direction no longer matters. You're suspended, no, not in darkness, not in light, but in something older, something before either existed. You drift forward without moving, and in front of you appears a single page, not a book, not a scroll, just one page, hovering mid-air, golden color edges frayed, as if aged by thought itself, and on its surface a single line, faint etched, rather than inked. It reads, before you were you, you were the sand. As your eyes trace the letters, you feel Ita vibration deep in your ribs, in your skin, in the marrow of who you were before. You had a name before language shaped your mind. You see flashes, not memories, not dreams, but impressions, the brush of starlight on your cheek, the scent of a forest from a world you've never seen, the sound of a lullaby, sung in a language that hasn't been invented. Yet you were not empty before you were born. You were full, overflowing, with possibility, with knowing, with a kind of truth that this life made you forget. The page glows gently and reveals more lines, like layers of a message only understood when read with the soul. You once knew silence, not as absence but as presence. You once trusted without needing reason. You once loved without knowing the word for it. Once listened before sound. You are not learning now, you are remembering, and suddenly you understand this page doesn't belong in a book, because it predates storiettes, the page written by whatever made you, not Your parents not time but, something greater not, God not, fate just, source purent, shape still shaping. You try to touch the page, but it moves backward, not away from you toward. You wand. As it presses against your chest, head dissolves and you feel it settle right behind your sternum where breath meets being and something in you opens, not like a door, like a flower that has been waiting patiently for its season. You breathe and it's the first time in a long time that it feels like remembering instead of surviving. You float back to the library, but now it looks different, not because it changed, because you see it with older eyes. You've been here longer than you think, maybe forever. You walk forward, and every book you pass leans gently in your direction, like they knew all along that you'd eventually remember who you were before you were anything at all. You feel it shift behind you, like something waking up the moment you stop trying to find it to turn on. There at Isa, single shelf that wasn't there a moment ago, or maybe it always was, but it stayed hidden until now. It stands quietly, unremarkable land, yet it hums with a gravity that pulls at your ribs, not from curiosity, from invitation. You walk closer and realize there are no titles on the spawns, no dust, no symbols, only blank books. Row after road sends hundreds each, one faintly warm, breathing like they're alive but waiting. You reach out to the nearest one and as your fingers graze the cover, the book inhales, slow deep pull, like it recognizes you. You open it and it's blank until the second you blink, then words appear, your words you had today, dreams you dismissed last night, tiny moments you forgot by morning, now laid out in perfect rhythms as shelves. Your present moments archived in real time, not by hand, but by choice. Every decision, every delay, every emotion you almost acknowledged is here, not to haunt, to honor you. Pick up another. This one shows the moment you almost texted someone you missed them. Chose not to. The silence that followed is documented like poetry. You see the line, they didn't ignore you, they were waiting. To you set it down and pick up another. It holds the feeling of waking up and not knowing why you felt heavy, and it says sometimes grief has no name, but still needs a place to rest. You realize these books aren't being written by someone else, they're written by the version of youth that never stops paying attention, the part of you that notices every flicker of Sullivan when your mind races past it. We reach for the last one. It's heavier, cooler, and when you open it, it contains only one line. In gold. You are finally ready to see what you already are. You close the book and every volume on the shelf exhales a breath of recognition, not approval, recognition, because the shelf didn't appear to show you something new. It appeared to show you that you were always becoming, always noticing, always writing your life in ways no one else ever saw you. Step back and the shelf begins to fade, but the warmth doesn't leave, it settles inside. You walk on and suddenly there's only one final corridor left. You feel it calling, not with urgency, but with the quiet of a final page, waiting to be turned. Asterisk. The corridor narrows one final time, not to confine but to focus. The walls around you hum faint vibrations in the quiet, like an orchestra tuning for a song that has no sheet music. You reach a room round, infinite, lit by a single lantern suspended mid-air beneath it, one book resting on a pedestal that doesn't touch the ground. It floats just a few inches above the floor. The book is different. You feel it before you even see it. It's heavier than truth, lighter than memory, bound in something that looks like leather but moves like water, and in the center of the cover a single emblem, not of a star, not of a simple jest. Your salif. It could be carved into a shape. It would look like this. You approach, hands trembling, and when you touch it to know this is it, the last book, not because it ends everything, but because it contains all of it. Every life you've lived, every version you've met, every moment you've forgotten, dream you buried, every choice you questioned, every silence you kept. It's all here. You open the cover and there's no title page, just this. You are not one story. You are the library. You turn the pages and it begins not with your birth but with your beginning, which happened long before you had a body. It shows you drifting through lives, not linearly, not logically, but lyrically moments from other selves, from other timelines bleeding into each other, like watercolors on the edge of understanding, and, with each page, see something deeper. Design not fate, not plan but pattern. You are not random, you are recorded echoes of choice, rippling forward and backward, through time, forming constellations of meaning that no one else can see. But now you don't. Then you find the final page, but it's not blank. It's a mirror, smooth, warm, and when you look into it, you don't see a reflection. You see a door, one you've walked through 1,000 times, one you're about to walk through again, because this isn't the end. This is the acknowledgement that there was never a single universe, a single story, only one truth. You are the reader, you are the writer, you are the shelf, you are the book. You close the final page, everything around you dissolves, the shelves, the lights, the sound. All that's left is you standing in a field of possibility, with number, path, no signposts, so only direction, only freedom, and somewhere in your pocket, final book still rests, because you'll need it to remember what it means to be a story that never really ends, only unfolds. Asterisk. It started with silence, not the peaceful kind, the hollow kind, the kind that drips down alleyways and settles in your bones before you even realize you're cold. The city was always awake, always humming, but not anymore. Now it waits, and no one remembers what it's waiting for. Buildings still stand, but not proudly. They lean slightly, like tired bones trying to hold on to something they've already lost. Windows blink with old static doors, open to staircases that go nowhere, and the sky above asterisk is a bruise that never healed, gray, heavy, endless. They used to say the sun rose here once, but now they don't even say that. They don't say anything at all, asterisk, except him, the man in the long coat, asterisk, with eyes like dying stars and footsteps that don't echo. He walks the city like it owes him answers, or maybe like he's the only one who still remembers how to ask the right questions. They call him names behind cracked curtains, the shadow talker, echo keeper, one who hears things we're not supposed to hear, but he just calls himself witness, because he didn't come to save the city, he came to listen to it. And the shadows, they talk to him not in words but in shapes and movements that make no sense unless you've been broken in just the right places. He walks beneath flickering streetlights that don't light anything, whispers into corners that forgot what daylight feels like, and the darkness whispers back not threats, not warnings, stories, memories, truths that everyone else pretended to forget. The shadows remember the first time the sun didn't rise. They remember the man who smiled too wide when it happened. They remember the moment the city chose silence over shame and buried its voice beneath layers of noise, and he, the witness, listens to it all, not to understand but to carry it, because every shadow here is a secret that once begged to be known, and now it has one last chance to be spoken. You watch him move and wonder, is he met a war? Has he simply accepted that sanity is just the refusal to speak to the dark? You don't follow him, but he knows you're there, and one night, the silence is loud enough. He turns and says without moving his mouth, you can hear them too, can't you? On suddenly, you do. The whispers crawling up the back of your neck, the stories stitched into cracks in the sidewalk, the names the city tried to erase. They're all still here waiting for someone to listen, and you realize this city didn't lose the sun, it gave it away, because light made the lies to visibly in the shadow. The only ones brave enough to tell the truth, asterisk. He doesn't tell you where to go. He doesn't need to be, 'cause the shadows start pulling you gently like old hands that used to hold yours in dreams. You no longer remember. You find yourself walking without purpose, bet not without direction, through alleyways stitched in rust and fog, past windows where curtains twitched like eyelids, past signs that point both ways and neither, until you reach it. The old clock where it doesn't tick, it breathes. The face is cracked, the hands are still stuck at 3:17, and no one in the city remembers what happened at that time, but the shadows do. You step through the archway and feel something shift, like gravity changed its mind for just a second inside. It's darker than dark, not black, hollow like The place light goes to forget itself and you follow the man's footprints. 7 though they're not visible you just know where he walked because the air is different. There you descend a spiral staircase made of silence, the kind that curls around your thoughts and makes you question which ones are actually yours. The air thickens with something ancient, something you'd call memory if you had the language for it. Tat, the bottom A, door not locked but sleeping you. Touch it hand, its size open review. A room small circular filled with ticking but not from the clock above from. Watches dozens hundreds thousands hanging from the walls, dangling from the ceiling piled on the floor like forgotten prayers. Sheet. One ticking but none of them in syncage, one locked. In a moment someone didn't want to forget, or couldn't hand in the center a table, with a single item on it, a photograph, faded edges, curled. Like it's been hiding from time instead of living inside it to. Look at it and it's not familiar, but it feels like loss, not yours but someone's hand. As you pick it up, the ticking stops. Every watch, every clock, every echo holds its breath and then a voice behind you, hollow but clear. She used to wait for me, hear you. Turn and he's there, the man who speaks to shadows, but he's not looking at you, he's looking at the photo and something in his chest is breaking slowly, quietly, like an old building remembering what it meant to be home. He speaks again. City took her not with force, with forgetfulness. It made her disappear. By pretending she never existed, he walks to the wall. Titch, one of the watches. One stopped the moment she said my name for the last time. He takes the photo from your hands, places it gently back on the table and says, sigh, don't come here to mourn, come here to remember what the silence cost. Yuge turns to Yuan. His eyes are heavier. Nah, you can't save them, but you can listen, because every forgotten thing in this city is screaming for someone to know it was really Van, if only for a moment. Ticking resumes slower, this time like it's waiting for what you'll choose to remember. You leave the room, but the sound follows, not like an echo, like a heartbeat, and you realize you're already changing, because once you've heard the shadows you can't unhear them. You can only decide what you'll do with what they said. Asterisk, it's somewhere near the east end of the city, or maybe the west. You're not sure anymore because directions have started to unravel. Here maps don't matter, names even less, but somehow find it. The alley not special, not labeled, just narrow, choked by leaning brick walls and rusty stairwells that hang like old regrets. You enter it like you have 1,000 times before, only this time you realize this alley isn't just old, it's looping. A fold in the city's skin. You reach the end, turn left hand, find yourself walking in from the other side. Again, same trash bin, same water drip, same old torn flyer flapping like a trapped breath. Against the wall you do it again, same path, same end, same begin. Now the air starts to press down on you, heavy, not like weight, like repetition. You shout, but the sound doesn't echo. It thins, evaporates, like the alley has heard every scream already and found them all forgettably. Walk faster, then slower. You try skipping, closing your eyes, but each time you end up right back where you started. The alley isn't punishing you, it's showing you something, and you remember what the man said. You can't save them, but you can listen. So you stop completely, let your breath settle. For the first time you hear Ita faint, scraping behind the wall, logarithmic, like someone carving into stone with trembling fingers. You press your ear to the bricks and the wall sighs open, not physically, emotionally, and you step through into a hidden chamber, no bigger than a closet, and inside day girl, the memory of one sitting on the floor, ends into the stone over and over, same sentence, same hand, same movement. She doesn't see you, but her voice is clear. They forgot me, they forgot me, they forgot me, they forgot me. Each carving leaves a groove in her fingers, each repetition more desperate than the last. You kneel, place your hand on hers, and for a moment she stops, looks up, eyes hollow, not dead, just erased. She whispers, do you see me? And you nod yes. She exhales and dissolves, not into dust, into ink. Her body becomes the writing on the wall, and the sentence changes, not erased, valved. Now reads, I was here and now are you. You step back into the alley and This time it lets you leave not because you broke it but because you understood it. The loop was never a trap, it was a memory refusing to fade until someone carried it out to walk back into the pretend. The shadows seem to bow as you pass one more voice, remembered one less. Echo lost asterisk, you find it by accident, is the only way anyone ever finds Ita courtyard tucked behind collapsed apartments, surrounded by dead trees that still pretend it's spring and in the center a fountain not grand not beautiful, just old circular, its stone chipped like bitten fingernails. But something's wrong, the water doesn't rise, sinks, it pours inward as if the center is thirsty and nothing is ever enough. You step closer and realize the fountain doesn't make sound. There's no trickling, no splash, only silence and an AK pressure in your stomach, a nausea you can't explain. Like the fountain isn't just swallowing water, it's swallowing memory, motion, self. You sit at the edge and look down. The pool is deep, too deep, deeper than it should be for something built by human hand. The bottom shadows swirl like oil, formless but familiar, and suddenly you feel lighter, like something was just taken from you. You check your pockets, then your pulse, and then it hits you. You can't remember the name of your first love, not there, face not there, voice just the hole they left you. Lean back in shock and a whisper echoes from below. Thank you, and you understand the fountain feeds on forgetting not to harm but to soothe. It drinks what people bring in silence, regrets. They can't carry any more secrets that weigh more than their worth, pain that won't evolve. You lend and see an inscription on the side of the basin, almost too faint to read. It says place it here and it won't follow you home. You sit again, sure, because you don't know what you're ready to lose. But the shadow talker arrives, sits beside you and speaks softly. Some things are worth remembering, but not all things deserve to live inside you forever. He pulls from his coat a single matchbox, opens its inside is a photo of someone he once loved, smiling a little out of focus, and in the corner a burned edge. He drops it into the fountain and it doesn't sink, it disappears without ripple, without farewell. He stands and says, now I can love her without being broken by her absence. He walks away, happy but whole, and the fountain hums, satisfied not hungry. You stare down at the black surface again and ask yourself, what am I still carrying that no longer belongs in me? Reach into your chest metaphorically, but it feels real, and you find Ita. Name it. Fear silence you. Whisper it into your hand and drop it, and the fountain takes it not. Greedily, gratefully you leave without looking back, and for the first time in weeks or years or lives you feel a little more room in your ribcage, like maybe there's space now for something new. Asterisk. It stands near the center of the city, hidden in plain sight. Gray building with shattered balconies and windows that reflect nothing, not sky, not movement, not time, just absence. And on the third floor, room number 313, with no door, no knob, no frame, just a flat patch of walls. If someone erased the entrance but left the room, you shouldn't be able to enter, but you do be, 'cause the moment you touch the wall it forgets that it was solid and folds inward like breath. You step through and immediately you understand why there was no way in, because this place wasn't meant to be found, it was meant to be compelled, like a secret too fragile to say out loud. It smells like dust and unspoken sentences. The air tastes like childhood nightmares and old music. The walls are lined with photographs, none of them in frames, just tacked on like desperate reminders. Faces look out at you, smiling, frowning, screaming, but all of them share one thing: their eyes are scratched out, not digitally, not with Photoshop, with fingernails. Some photos are stained with something darker than coffee. You step deeper and the shadows gather behind you, not threatening, just curious, like they've been waiting for company. In the corner of the room a TV flickers, but it's not plugged in. It plays loops of memories that aren't yours, birthdays that never happened, arguments you don't remember having, a face yours but younger, bleeding from the mouth, laughing anyway. You sit and the floor groans beneath you like it's alive. The shadow talker appears not from a door, he just steps into focus as if he was always here. He doesn't speak, he hands you a tape and labeled, and nods toward the TVU. Slide it in and what you see stops your breath. It's a moment you've never told anyone. A night when you almost gave up completely, when you stood by a bridger, lay in a tub or held something sharp, not acting, just considering, and the version of you on the screen does in. T-cry just waits for a sign, any sign. The shadow talker says we don't keep this room locked to hide pain, we keep it locked to protect truth, because sometimes the darkest thing about you isn't what you did, it's what you almost didn't, survived anyway. You look around the room again and the photos begin to change, the faces fade and yours remains whole and marked right at you, not to haunt, to honor you. Get up, hand to the wall behind you, shifts a doorway, now framed in light. The room has released you because now you via seen what you needed to see, the part of you that didn't quit even when you could have. You step back into the city and for a moment you swear the building exhales like a wound, finally acknowledging it was real and healing. Just a little asterisk. The street is empty tonight. Even the shadows are quieter, as if they're holding their breath for what's ahead. Follow the shadow talker without asking, because deep down, you already know where he's leading. He stops outside a building with no name, just cracked stone, and a single flickering bulb that doesn't quite reach the ground. The door opens before you touch it, like it's been waiting for your silhouettes inside. There's only one thing, a mirror, tall, thin, framed in rusted iron. It stands in the center of the room. No windows, no other furniture, just reflection, except it doesn't reflect unit fully. It reflects everything you regret, only that you step in front of it and immediately you see them, the people you hurt, the apologies you never gave, the choices you didn't make when they mattered, every silence that screamed louder than any words you could have spoken. You try to look away, but your feet won't move, because this mirror doesn't ask for your attention. It commands it. Your hands begin to shake because you're not seeing versions of yourself. You re-seeing the things you carry, the invisible weights you pretend aren't there, and then it begins to whisper, not with sound, with images. It shows you the friend you ghosted because you didn't know how to handle their pain, the family member you judged without understanding, the lover you let go, not because you didn't care, but because you cared too much and didn't believe you were worthy of staying. Each moment plays in full, not fast, not slow, just real, the kind of real that makes your throat close and your chest tighten. And then the worst one of all, the regret that isn't about someone else, the regret of who you could have been. The mirror shows you on fire in color and purpose, all the ways you dimmed your light to fit inside other people's comfort, all the doors you didn't knock on because you didn't think you belonged behind them. You fall to your knees, but the mirror doesn't comfort you, it simply waits in. Then the shadow talker kneels beside you, places a hand on your shoulder and speaks softly. This mirror doesn't exist to punish you, it exists to return your truth, because everything you see, hear, you still have time to make peace with you. Wipe your face, and for the first time, the mirror shifts. It shows the same scenes, but from another angle. The friend who forgave you silently, the family member who always knew, the lover who still hopes you're okay, and the you that you could still become. Not too late, not over, just waiting. You stand and the mirror breathes with you. You touch it tanned. The glass doesn't feel cold, feels like skin. Your skin be, 'cause this wasn't a punishment, it was a reunion between who you are and who you've been hiding from. You walk away and the mirror fades into the wall, not gone, just part of the building, now part of you. You step outside and the city feels quieter, because sometimes the loudest thing in your life is the version of you you're still trying to forgive. Asterisk. You feel it before you see it, pull low in your spine, a gentle gravity, not toward danger, toward something deeper. You follow the man through a side street that shouldn't exist. It bends sharply where no road has ever been tanned. At the end of it there's a door, not ancient, just forgotten, its paint peeled back like memory under fingernails. He opens it without a key, and inside there are stairs, just stairs, but they don't spiral. They descend endlessly, no walls, just shadow, no handrail, only breath. You both begin to walk down, 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 down. Something about the air changes, not Colder, heavier, like every step pulls the past a little closer. He says nothing, you say nothing, because in this place words feel disrespectful. Too sharp, too loud. The staircase narrows as you go, but never stops you. Try to count your steps, but numbers betray you. Here they melt into fog, like trying to remember how long you've been dreaming. Eventually, the light changes, not brighter, just old. It smells like thunder and unfinished apologies, and they're carved into the stair itself. Face single sentences. Is where you buried it to. Stop. The shadow talker doesn't. Keeps walking because this isn't his floor, it's yours. You kneel beside the words, and immediately you remember a moment you've tried not to visit. The choice, the silence, the thing you locked away because you weren't ready to face it. To reach into the stone with your bare hands, and somehow it yields. Dust falls away like breath on cold glass, and inside a box, small, wooden, cracked at the edges, like it's aged. Inside your soul you open it, and there it is. The version of you that never healed, still curled, still shaking, still waiting for you to come back. You don't cry because the pain isn't new. You just finally let it have a voice. You whisper to the version inside the boxium, sorry I left you down here, and the box breathes, fills with warmth. Don't try to pull that version out too. Just sit with it, hold it, let it exist beside you instead of beneath you. The staircase hums, and for the first time you hear the others, hundreds, thousands, all walking down, all finding their boxes, all remembering what they buried to survive. You close the lid, but not to lock it. To resond. The shadow talker is waiting at the next step. He looks at you not with praise but with understanding. You kept going when most people stop, and that's what makes the descent worth it. You both walk again, deeper, not into darkness, into memory, because sometimes the only way out of the shadow is down through it. Asterisk. It flickers at the edge of an abandoned intersection, bent slightly like it's tired of standing. Watch, the pavement around it is cracked, not from age but from waiting. Everything here waits. The buildings lean away, their sidewalk curls in, and beneath the flickering glow, shadow talker stops, points at the lamp, and says softly, this one doesn't light the way forward, only what's already happened. You step under the lamp, and the air shifts. The cold isn't on your skin, it's in your bones, like your body just remembered something. Your mind still refuses to admit. The bulb buzzes once, and then everything changes. The street is the same, but it isn't. Bake is now, because no, you're watching it as it was 5 years ago. 10 zoo blinkins. See yourself running through the rain, or maybe standing still, frozen in that one moment you try never to repeat. Lamp hums louder, and the shadows beneath it deepen, not darker, just denser, like they're holding more. Then absence. You turn and see others, people you forgot or thought you did. Teacher A, stranger A, version of you, wounded, smiling, screaming, and then silence again. The shadow talker doesn't step into the light. He waits at the edge because he knows this is your story to walk through, and the lamp keeps showing you not what you did wrong, but what you never really saw. Moments that hurt you in ways you didn't understand at the time. Things that didn't feel like trauma until you realized they never left. A friend saying something small that broke something big. A silence that felt like safety but was actually controlled. The first time you lied to yourself and believed it. To kneel under the lamp, not because you're overwhelmed, but because the weight of remembering is sacred. It's not punishment, it's return. The light pulses and shows one last image, a person walking away from you. You don't call their name, you just watch them go, and suddenly you're the one walking, not away, forward, because the light begins to fade. Its job done. It didn't come to blind you, it came to reveal, and it did. The street lamp sparks once, then dies, but you're not in darkness. You've just stopped needing that kind of light. The shadow talker meets your eyes and for the first time smiles, a real one, not out of joy, out of recognition. You saw it too, stayed. Now you carry that street with you, not like baggage, like compass. Asterisk. T's tucked between two buildings that don't speak to each other anymore. Their windows bricked up, their doors long sealed, but the theater, it still breathes barely. You can feel its breath when you stand close enough to the marquee where faded letters spell out a title you recognize but can't remember reading. Until now, asterisk. What you could have said. You entered a door groans like it forgot what welcome sounds like. Inside, the air is thick with velvet dust and echoes that never learned how to leave. The seats are empty but warm as if someone just stood up before you walked in. You make your way down the center island. The shadow talker follows without sound. You both sit in the front row and the screen flickers to life, but there's no sound, only light, only yow. You're watching a scene from your life, one you regret. The words you didn't say, the choice you didn't make, the person you could have held on to if you'd just do. Feel it rise in your chest, not sadness, something sharper, recognitions. The real cuts another scene. This time you're older, still silent, still folding yourself into shapes someone else could tolerate. The theater hums like it's feeding on the honesty now pouring from your spine. It's not punishing you, it's preserving you. Seen after scene, versions of you who didn't speak up, who didn't stay, who didn't leave, who didn't believe on. The room begins to fill. You turn and the seats are no longer empty. Every version of you is here, every age, every silence, every would have been. They all sit and watch with you, none of them angry, none of them disappointed, just watching because regret isn't about shame, it's about recognition. And this theater isn't for scolding, it's for grieving and then letting go. The final scene plays it as you're right now sitting in this theater, watching yourself, and the screen fades to black. No applause, no credits, just lusta. Lights never turn on, but you see the exit to stand. The versions of you stay seated, not trapped. Donathieve witnessed what they needed, and you carry them now, not to relive, bait to remind of the power in speaking when it still matters. You step out of the theater and the door closes behind you, bait this time gently like goodbye, without guilt, asterisk. It stands on a hill. The maps don't name, you don't remember climbing here, but your breath says otherwise. It's shallow, tight, like your chest is making room for something it's not sure it wants to hold. The house isn't haunted in the traditional sense. There are no ghosts that shriek, no blood on the walls, no creaking floors or moving chairs, but it's haunted. Oh, it's haunted by something heavier, something real. It's haunted by a question, and that question is yours. The door is slightly ajar, not wide enough to welcome, just enough to tempt. The wind whistles through the crack like an unfinished sentence. You step inside, and immediately it feels like home, but not your home, the home you never got, the one you always imagined. In the quiet spaces between memories, there's a couch that sags in the middle, a fireplace that hasn't burned in years, books on the shelf that you swear you remember writing, though you've never held a pen like that. You walk slowly, not because you're afraid, but because this place deserves reverence. Each step feels like it carries decades, maybe lifetimes. You touch the wall, and it feels warm, alive, like someone you loved once leaned against it and left their heartbeat behind. The kitchen is set for two, but covered in dust, like someone hoped for company and gave up waiting. On the table, a letter unopened, with your name on it, not your full name, not your nickname, but the name you only hear in dreams, the one that makes you turn around even when no one is calling. You sit slowly, like gravity is stronger. Here you touch the envelope. It pulses once, and the house exhales. You open it. Inside, one line written in your handwriting. Why did you leave when you needed to stay? The most. You drop the letter because you remember. Now this house isn't real. It's a construct, a question made solid, a choice you didn't make. You were here once, not this exact place, but this feeling, this moment, a time you turned away from something or someone because staying felt too vulnerable, too exposing, too. Rilu walked to the hallway. Each picture on the wall is a version of you that stayed smiling, crying, growing. You never saw these futures because you ran, and this house has been waiting for you to ask why. The shadow talker appears in the hallway, not to scold, but to witness. He says, "This place doesn't want an apology, it wants an answer." You look at the photos, the dust, the empty plate at the table, and you speak because maybe the answer isn't about what you should have done, but about finally owning what you didn't. He was afraid, you say, not of the moment, but of what it meant, of what it could change, of how deeply I'd have to show up, and I wasn't ready. The house sighs and the lights shift. The second plate vanishes. The couch straightens itself. The fire ignites soft warm beak, 'cause now the house understands. You weren't wrong for leaving. You were just unfinished, and now you're here, not to stay, but to see, to answer. The shadow talker walks past you, brushes his fingers across the mantle, and says, most people build houses out of denial. You built one out of pause, and now that you've pressed play, it doesn't need to wait anymore. You step outside, and the door closes gently behind you. No lock, no trap, just peace, because some questions don't haunt. They hold until you're ready. Asterisk, it spans across nothing, or maybe it spans across everything. There's no river beneath it, no road below, just fog, endless live. The kind of fog that doesn't just hide, it chooses what you're allowed to see. Bridge stretches from one forgotten rooftop to another, but it stops halfway abruptly, as if the builders changed their minds mid-thought or forgot what they were building toward. The steel beams jut out like broken bones, cables hang like tired arms, and in the silence you hear Ita hum, not mechanical, not human, something older. You step onto the bridge with the shadow talker behind you. Need of you speak, because this is the kind of place that swallows sound, not maliciously, ritually. You walk until the path ends where the concrete becomes airware. The railing gives up and you stand at the edge, not on the edge of falling, on the edge of knowing. The fog parts just slightly enough for you to see the space that isn't there, a chasm between who you were and who you never became. This bridge was yours, built from plans you once believed, in dreams you began sketching, before you knew how long they'd take. Before you realized the price, you see scattered tools on the ground, rusty blueprints pinned down by cracked stones, a hammer with your initials, a measuring tape that stops halfway through the numbers. You realize this bridge wasn't abandoned, it was paused because you didn't think you could finish it. Then you forgot you ever started. The shadow talker kneels beside the plans, runs a finger over them like someone reading Braille, says, most people don't fear the fall, they fear the work required to fly. Instead, kneel to, and the fog shifts again, this time revealing moments, memories of when you began building, late nights fueled by stubborn hope, small Winsteiny visions, blueprints made of heartbeats, and then the day it all stopped. You remember now, it wasn't a failure, it was a cracks. Something happened, something took your voice, took your hands, took your courage, and convinced you this dream was too heavy to carry across. But you never stopped needing it. Even if you stopped speaking its name, you stand again in. This time the unfinished end doesn't look broken, it looks patient, waiting. The shadow talker hands you something. It's small, heavy, familiar, a single bolt, the one you never tightened, the one you left in your pocket the day you walked away. He says the work is still waiting, not because you failed, but because you paused long enough to learn how to build it stronger. You kneel and press the bolt into the steel. It fits perfectly on the bridge, hums not loudly, but with purpose, like it remembers what it was for. You take a breath and feel something shift inside your ribs, not inspiration, permission to begin again. You turn to leave, and the shadow talker stays, not because he's done, but because this was your step to take alone, and know you've taken it. The fog doesn't part, it welcomes you, because it knows you'll finish this bridge, maybe not today, but soon. And when you do, it'll carry more than you. It'll carry every version of you that still believes in crossing. Asterisk, it sits in the center of a square that no one remembers, naming a stone plaza with weeds growing through the cracks, benches that face nothing, pigeons that never fly away, and in the middle lay towering iron clock. Its hands move slowly, smoothly, but in reverse. Stick by ticket unwinds time, not just on its face, but in the air around it. To feel it before you even look, your spine tightens, your breath shortens. Though shadows lean forward, eager not To frighten, to remind, the shadow talker waits at the edge of the plaza. He won't go further. He simply says, whatever you left behind, it's still walking toward you. You approach the clock end. The moment your foot crosses the stone ring that encircles its base, the world changes subtly. The colors fade, the air thickens, and the sound of ticking becomes the only thing you hear. You feel younger, not better, just less finished. The ground beneath you holds more memory than white. You blink and you're in another year. You don't know which one, but you remember how it felt: cold wrist, shaky breath, that moment in a bathroom mirror where you couldn't meet your own eyes. The clock ticks again and the world spins backward, smaller, now watching someone else leave a room you never wanted to be in, wishing you had the words to make them stay. The clock ticks again and you're standing outside a hospital, not for yourself, but for someone you couldn't save, not because you didn't care, because you didn't know how another to can't. You're back in your childhood room, the posters on the walls, the stuffed animal with a missing button, Ivy, a window you used to stare out of and wonder where you'd be in 10 years. The clock keeps ticking and you feel it all, not as pain as proof that you lived, that you're still living. The clock isn't reversing time to change it, it's showing you that every second mattered, of in the ones you tried to forget, especially those. And then it pauses. The hands freeze and the shadows around the plaza grow still. The air shifts again and you're standing in this very moment, not younger, not older, just fully here. The clock hums and you hear it whisper, you haven't run out of time. You've just stopped using it like it's yours. The shadow talker steps beside you. No, and he says, most people look at time like a river. They forget it's a mirror. You stare up at the frozen clock and it starts again, not backward, not forward, just ticking properly, honestly, and you realize time doesn't want to punish you, it wants to walk with you, not drag, not trap, just walk. You step away and behind youth plaza starts to change. Weeds shrink back into stone benches, face the rising sun. The pigeons finally take flight because someone came back, not to change time but to remember that it still belongs to them. You look at your hands, your breath, your spine. You feel now fully knowing it's more than enough. You find it inside an abandoned hotel, 9th floor, and of the hall where the carpet stops being red and starts being memory. Every door is open except one room, 917. Its number is scratched out, not removed, just denied. You walk up to it and the handle is cold, too cold for a summer night to press it down, and it turns, but the door doesn't open, not until you say something, anything. A whisper, because this room doesn't open for strangers, only confessions. So you speak one word, truth, and the door lets go. It swings inward, quiet, heavy, and inside it's not what you expect. No furniture, no wallpaper, no bed, just mirrors, dozens, no hundreds covering every inch of every wall. Some cracks, some clean, some fogged by breath that never dried. You step in and the door slams shut. The lock clicks, but it doesn't lock from the outside, only from within. The one who closed it too always were, because this room is made of the parts of you you refused to see. Every mirror reflects something different, not your face but your facades. One mirror shows you smiling too wide, the kind of smile that hides bruises behind the teeth. Another shows you quiet, but it's not peace, it's suppression. A third shows you strong, but you see now you were just numb. The room begins to warm, not with heat, with memory, and suddenly you're not alone. A mirror flickers and in its reflection a different version of you steps forward. The people you became to survive, the mask you wore for your parents, the silence you wore for your partner, the anger you wore when sadness felt too dangerous. They all stare at you, now waiting not to confront, to be acknowledged. The shadow talker isn't here. He never entered, because this room doesn't belong to the world, only to you. You walk to one mirror, touch its surface, and feel your heartbeat echo through the glass. Version inside steps closer and says, you made me, but you don't need me anymore. You press your forehead to the glass and whisper, I know. The mirror cracks gently, not violently, like it's being freed. One by one you touch the others and the room begins to shift. The air clears the floor, steadies the silence, turns into breath. The final mirror is small handheld sitting on the ground. You kneel, pick it up, and for the first time you see your true face, not the past, not the pain, just your Surreal and adorned and strong. Because of it you stand and the door unlocks, not because you're done, because you're ready. You open it, step out, and for a second you hear the mirrors behind you sigh, not from sorrow, from release. They don't follow because they were never meant to. Were meant to be seen, and now they have. The hallway greets you differently. The red carpet returns, the walls straighten, and the elevator dings like it's been waiting for you this whole time. Asterisk. You follow him into the quiet again, but this silence is different. Doesn't press down on you, it lifts like a veil, pulling away from memory. Though building ahead is ancient, but breathing, its bricks whisper, its windows blink. It essay library, but not one that holds the world's stories, one that holds yours, not the version people know, the version you buried, the version you feared, the version still being written with every breath you take. The door swings open before you reach it, and the smell of ink rushes into your lungs like a second heartbeat. The shelves tower above you, some made of bone, some of stone, some of things you can't name without breaking them. Thousands of books, each one identical but not empty, not anymore. The shadow talker gestures, choose one. You do. You reach for a book, and the moment your fingers touch the spine, it pulls your breath from your chest. You don't open it, it opens you. Pages flutter wildly, and you watch scenes unravel in cursive memory. Moments you forgot, moments you denied, moments you didn't think mattered, but they mattered. They all mattered. You see the time you told someone you were fine and weren't to. See the time you said nothing when everything inside was screaming. You see the time you laughed too hard so no one would see the crack beneath every sentence written in your own voice, but not the voice you speak, with the voice that trembles just before sleep, the voice that whispers from the ribs, not the throat to turn the page. And it's blank, because this is where you stopped believing your story could go on. You touch the paper and your fingers begin to write, not in ink and pulse and breath and choice. Writes what you don't yet have words for, but need to feel. The shadow talker appears beside you and says, these aren't histories, they're forecasts. Every time you choose silence over expression, denial over truth, you give the pen away and the world writes you instead. You close the book, but it doesn't stop writing, because now you rejoin the narrative. You look around and realize each book is you, a different versions, burned some, buried some, gilded in gold. No one ever got to see. You see a shelf in the back roped off, dust covered. You step past the barrier and find a single book glowing faintly. You touch it and it's warm, heavy, but not hard to carry. You open it and inside is the life you were too scared to live. It's stunning, messy, alive, bet blank after a certain chapter, because it's still yours to finish. You close it gently and place it in your chest where it belongs, because you are not your past chapters. You are the author, still holding the pen, and the page is waiting. You walk out of the library and for a moment the walls shimmer like they're saying thank you for remembering that you were never just the reader. You were always the writer. Asterisk. It stands alone, freestanding in the center of a dead-end alley where the city seems to stop breathing. There's no wall, no building, no frame, just a window hovering, waiting, hand. Yet it doesn't feel out of place, feels final. The shadow talker slows as you approach. He doesn't say anything this time, because he knows this one is only for you. You step toward the glass and it comes alive before your hand even reaches it. The air bends, time flickers, and suddenly you're no longer looking through a window. You're looking through a possibility, a vision. H or C. See yourself older, maybe just frairy, or standing in a room filled with light, not the kind that comes from lamps, the kind that comes from peace, from knowing who you eerie. You're laughing with someone, nor many Sumian faces aren't clear, not because they don't exist, but because you haven't chosen them yet. Then they haven't chosen you, but the joy is real. It hums through the glass like a quiet chorus. You shift and the scene changes. Now you're alone, but not lonely, focused. Your Hands are building something, creating, writing, designing. Exonet. That's not what you do that matters here, it's how you are while doing it. Whole and broken, not perfect but at peace with the cracks, because they've stopped being flaws and started being windows of their own. Another shift, and you see yourself standing at the edge of something huge, a cliff, a city, a decision, and you're not afraid. You ready because everything that once held you back is behind you, now no longer dragging, just part of the path. Window flickers and shows one last image. Right now staring into it, and behind youth, shadow talker bout. This time he's fading because he's no longer needed. Not in the same way you've walked the streets of regret, faced the mirrors of memory, descended the staircases of silence and stilly hour. Here you, not the masks, not the fears, just you and this. This is what the window needed to show, not the future itself, but your readiness for it. The frame begins to dissolve, not vanish, integrate into you, because now you are the window, and what you choose to see next, what you choose to become, what you choose to build is entirely in your hands. The shadow talker steps close one last time, says the city didn't change, you did, and now you'll carry its map in your blood. You turn, and the alley is no longer dead end. A path stretches forward, dimly lit, quiet but open, and for the first time, you don't need to look back. You walk not because you have somewhere to be, but because you've finally remembered that forward was always yours. Asterisk. You don't notice it at first, that's how it's in the gaps, in the half blinks between thoughts, in the sliver of silence between one heartbeat and the next. It doesn't knock, it doesn't announce, it just arrives, and when it does, you forget something, not big, not important, just something. You walk into a room and forget why. You look at a face and can't recall the name. You put your phone down and swear it was never in your hand. These are not accidents, these are offerings, tiny pieces of you disappearing one at a time, and behind it Allah. Sound not loud, not even real, but once you notice it, you can't unhear it. Subtle static like a whisper, without a voice, a pressure in the back of your mind, as if something is watching from just behind the second hand of the clock, waiting for the next moment. You let your guard down, that's when it feeds the memory eater. It doesn't consume like fire, it erodes like tide, slow, relentless, gentle enough to excuse, fierce enough to destroy you. Try to catch it once you focus, sit still, breathe slow, and listen hard, and that's when you feel it, not as presence as absence, a flicker of a name you used to say every day. Asterisk. Gone, a childhood friend whose face blurs at the edges, now a promise you made to yourself, forgotten like dust behind a drawer. The memory eater doesn't just steal it, rearranges. Asterisk. Leaves false echoes in the empty spaces, so you think you remember, but you don't, not really. Asterisk. And the worst part, it's not malevolent, it doesn't hate you, it simply exists like mold in darkness, like moss on still stone, like silence in a room that once held music. The shadow talker appears beside you now, but he doesn't say anything, because words are dangerous here. Evan speaking might be an offering. You move carefully, hold your thoughts like fire in your palms, and you ask yourself the hardest question of all. What have I forgotten that mattered, and who was I before it left me? The noise pulses again. You close your eyes, not to block it out, but to see if something inside you still remembers, and in the stillness you find something small burning, a memory it couldn't touch because it wasn't made of words or moments, but meaning. You remember who held you when you couldn't speak. You remember why you promised yourself not to break again. You remember your name, the one they gave youth, one that grows inside your ribs when no one's watching, and just like that the noise quiets, not gone, just respectful, because now it knows you know, and knowing is the only thing it fears. Asterisk. You first see him in a Kafur, maybe a trainer, maybe in a memory that wasn't yours. He's sitting alone, staring at a window that shows nothing but a smear of light. He's dressed like everyone else, moves like everyone else, breathes, orders, baits, but something's off. Something underneath the surface feels missing. It's not in his eyes, it's in his absence, because when you glance again, there's nothing in his chair, not even a dent, like he never sat there at all. You don't speak to him, not yet, but he keeps showing up, not in the same place, not in the same way, but always near you, like gravity, like guilt, and always you feel something slip. Word day songa, face just the edge of something that used to live sharp in your chest, now dulled, now distant, and then one day you catch him in a mirror rue. Try toyar, brushing your teeth, half awakened out of the corner of your eye. You see someone standing behind you. You spin nothing but when you look back in the mirror, alone, completely no reflection at all, not even yours, because he's there now inside the mirror war. Maybe he is the mirror. The shadow talker arrives, then leans against the sink and says he's not taking what you remember. He's taking what you forgot to become. You stare at the mirror again, and now you see something else, not a man, but the space he leaves behind, the outlines of choices you didn't make, the dreams you abandoned before they had a chance to hurt, youth, people you turned away from out of fear you'd become too real. He feeds on fragments, but not just memories, potential things you might have been if you'd only dare. That's why you never see his reflection, because he isn't one. He's the absence of one. You try to speak, but your voice cracks, because deep down you wonder, what part of me does he already own? What parts have I given away so easily? I never noticed them go. You reach for the mirror. Your hand goes through, not into darkness, into light, but it's cold, distant, like touching a version of yourself left behind in a colder world. You pull back, into mirror shatters quietly like a breath held too long. Tiny shards fall around you, and each one shows a face, a version of you with a different job, a different partner, a different dream, some happy, some broken, all renew. Kneel, pick up a single shard and press it to your chest. It doesn't cut, it heals, because now you've seen him, the man with no reflection, and the next time he reaches for a piece of you, you'll know it's yours, and you'll know how to keep it. Asterisk, it's tucked away in a room you stopped entering years ago, not because it was locked, but because it wasn't back. Because it wasn't back. The moment you open that door, you remember that you've forgotten, and that's a kind of ache no medicine touches. That room is plain, unremarkable, soft carpet, dusty corners, a single wooden desk in the center, and inside that desk a drawer, just one with a handle that feels warmer than the rest of the furniture, like someone touched it often until they didn't. You hesitate, not because you're afraid of what's in it, but because you're afraid it might be empty or worse, full. You pull it open, and inside hundreds of scraps, sticky notes, napkins, wrinkled receipts, cornered notebook, paper torn with urgency, and every single one has a name handwritten, each in your writing, some neat, some rushed, some smudged from what might have been tears. You stare at the pile and realize you don't know who these people are. You don't recognize a single name, and yet they feel close, intimate, essential. You pick up the first one, Leah, nothing, no spark, no memory, but your hand shakes slightly. You pick up another, Rashid. Don't forget, this time still blank, but your heart skips anyway. Another, Louise, last chance, and that one hits you not with clarity, with grief, because suddenly you remember the feeling of her voice, not the words, just the temperature of her lap, warm like sunlight through a dirty window. You close your eyes and they all start arriving, not fully just impressions, hugs that lasted too long to be casual, smells that left with the season, promises that cracked like ice but never shattered completely. These were people you loved, or almost did. Door should have, and you wrote their names down so you wouldn't forget, but the memory eater came anyway, and with every second you stopped thinking about them, he took one more letter until even the vowels stopped echoing. The shadow talker kneels beside you, picks up a slip of paper, reads the name Devon. He smiles softly. He says he taught you how to grieve, and you didn't even know you were learning. You look up and he's not teasing, he's mourning with you, because these weren't mistakes, they were mosaics, moments that added color to the grayscale of your story. Some names were passing comets, others were constellations, but all of them mattered, and you wrote them down because some part of you knew one day you'd need to remember that you didn't live this life alone, that your soul has fingerprints pressed into it like wet clay. You reach for the drawer again, and this time you don't read, you close it slowly, not to forget to honor, because not every name has to return to be remembered. Some just want a place to restand. Now they have one asterisk. You've wandered through the alleyways of time. Tonight walked inside mirrors that forget themselves, opened drawers filled with names your soul still remembers, stared down the man with no reflection, and listened to the clock that dared to tick backwards. But this wasn't just a story, it was a memory. A map folded inside your ribcage, unfolded now line by line, shadow by shadow. The memory eater still exists, and it always will, because forgetting is part of living. But so is remembering, and so is choosing what gets to stay. You are not just made of bones and breath. You are made of the people you've loved, the moments you've hidden, the dreams you shelved, the pain you carried, the silence you broke, and every time you pause to look back, to listen deeper, to feel more honestly, you reclaim what was never truly lost. So, when the next fragment tries to slip, when the noise creeps in, when the reflection starts to blur, breathe, speak your name, remember who you are and who you still might become. Because not even time, not even silence, not even shadow can take from you what you choose to hold. This was Mind Scramble, and this was your mind unfolded. See you in the next dive into the unknown, where thought unravels and wonder remembers how to whisper again.